This time on Grenade Motorsports, we mess with an old radio. We try to catch a foot jam tail whip on a BMX bike. We put wheel speed sensors in an F-150, repair the charging system on a four-wheeler. Let's go. It's time to go. You had to be pretty well off to have one of these things in your house. I'm going to take just a couple minutes and explain to you exactly what this is and what I'm doing with it. This is a Philco AM/FM radio with an automatic record changer inside of it. It's also shortwave, which means you can listen to things from all over the globe. Basically a high-tech home theater system for the era. This one came to us from a friend of ours that it basically looked like that one. It didn't have the record player inside of it, and it's got a pretty cool story. It's something that her and her dad were gonna get to one day, and that never really happened. And he's gone now, and when I saw it, I said, you know, I can make that work. And she said, oh, could you? And that's exactly how I ended up with it. Back in 1946, this thing cost $239.50. In today's money, that's about $3,400. The reason that this one looks so good still is because these were cherished pieces of equipment. They were not cheap, so people took care of them. These were handcrafted pieces. They weren't mass produced. This is a piece of tiger maple, and I don't know if these pieces are tiger maple, but they use different types of hardwood, and this I think is a birch veneer, and the technology for the day was top notch. This one looks like it had been restored in probably the 60s based off the hardware that I'm seeing inside of it. The radio itself did not work. There was a lot of damage. I could see a couple of the tubes were smoked. So what I decided to do was make this work by today's standards. We're going to put a Bluetooth receiver in there. We're going to add a couple of more mid-range speakers, a pair of tweeters, and I already have a Rockford Fosgate sub mounted inside of it. I left the copper antenna in there because it's fantastic. And then we'll have our shelf built with our modern Bluetooth FM receiver. I made the power run through this unit so I could retain this switch. I wanted you to be able to walk up to it, light it up, and then flip the knob, and your phone now plays through these rockin' speakers. It's gonna be cool. The story with this thing is pretty neat. A friend of ours, her father recently passed away, and she was over there cleaning out the house, you know, and this was one of those projects that we think her dad was going to help her with and never got around to. And it's a little late, but better late than never. So I said, you know what I can do to that? I can make that light up, and I can make that play some kind of music. I go, that'd be cool. Oh, could you do that? Yeah, so that's why it's here. I guess she originally found it in the garbage or at the curb, you know, ready to be thrown out, and she picked it up, and I don't know how many years ago, but I believe it was a long time ago that she picked it up. She's never seen it illuminated. She's definitely never seen it play music, and I bet she didn't know that it had a record player. I put these chains on there because the record player shelf used to actually have like a scissor on it that would hold this and pull out the record player so you could access it. The chains kind of look cool. They're really old. These chains are probably from the 60s or 70s. I got them from my buddy Ray. He likes to bring me a lot of old goofy trinkets and things, which some things are really neat, like this chain. Another thing that made these so expensive was not only was that a record player in there, but apparently it was some sort of record player that could change records. I think it stored a few in a slot. I'll have to look at the pictures closer, but I realized that they were using, there's bulbs back here that illuminate the face, and I realized that they were using the chassis as a ground. So that's what I did. I was like, oh, well, it's probably just 12 volts. I reduced it to 12 volts by taking an old keyboard. Actually, this is a piece of music equipment of some kind. I don't remember. I took one of those And on all of these little transformers, if you look close, you can see it shows you which one's positive, which one's negative, and what the voltage output is. So you can use those for a lot of things. Don't throw those away. That is actually 12 volts for a car. It illuminates. I put a switch on it, and I put one of these transformers, and that illuminates just like it would if it was a running light on your car. So those are handy. Yeah, I basically just ran it in, stapled it, tied it together, made the chassis, a ground, powered the light bulbs, and I also took that from I believe that's a General Motors product, which is ironic because Philco was later bought by Ford and ran until like 1960 something. But anyway, that orange bulb gives the illusion of tube glow from the front. When I install the back cover, you'll see in a second, I'll show you. But those bulbs actually worked. They illuminate the face. This thing's really cool. It's copper, obviously, and it's the shortwave antenna. And it basically, you remember the antennas on your old TVs? If you do, you're old. But yeah, that, initially I thought the door on the front was for adjusting the antenna. These didn't originally have a knob on them, but I took knobs because it was missing some. I took knobs from a 1958 Chevy. That's a window crank knob. And these are vents from the truck, just like that over there. So you used to open it up, and I thought this did this because, and what was weird to me, there was no chain stopping the door from flopping open. So I thought this door was to adjust your antenna. So you could tune in shortwave Rome, London, Berlin, Japan, Australia, London, you know, Spain. That's what I thought this was for, until I looked up this model number, and I learned that it had a record player in it. Ultimately, I'm gonna put 2 tweeters and 2 mid-range speakers in here. I have to remove some of this cardboard. I've already got a Rockford Fosgate sub in there. And what's gonna happen is there's gonna be a shelf here that's gonna have a Bluetooth FM receiver. So you'll be able to open it up, turn it on, listen to your favorite music, Bluetooth it to your phone or whatever, your computer, whatever you wanna do. And this will be like a modern radio with modern sound. I mean, the thing I bought's got 200 watts in it, and it's gonna have 2 tweeters and 2 mid-ranges, plus this sub and a back on it. This thing's gonna sound like a symphony. It's gonna sound like $1 million. Being involved in music for as many years as I was, I know how to wire a crossover. So we're gonna be able to basically make big booming rock songs come out of this thing. I even made the dial move back and forth freely because it was not. Something I've been meaning to do for a long time, months in fact, wheel speed sensors. There's one on each wheel, and I've been putting it off because it's kind of a boring, stupid job. The truck runs fine without it. I just would like what they call the advanced track system to work. Well, let me get the wheels off this thing, get it up in the air a little bit, and I'll start to unplug these and find out that they won't come out of the hub, and I'm gonna have to probably drill, and I hope I don't have to buy new hubs, but let's see if they've improved since the last time I did this. So the inside of this, you can see right there, that wire, it disappears. I don't know if we can see in there, but that wire disappears into the center of the hub, which means pull the caliper and the rotor and see if you can get to the end of that. Looks like one's longer and one's shorter. These came together, so I'm assuming these are for the rear. But I better look at it, because if it looks like something that is really sensitive, I'll end up buying hubs and I can just stop right now without even breaking anything down. But if it looks like something I can get out of a rusted 12-year-old hub, jeez, that's going to be fun fishing that through wherever. But here's the end I'm concerned about. Oh, it looks like it might come out. If the bolt breaks off, I can probably do something to keep it there. But it's plastic. It doesn't look like you can twist it out, so it has to be pulled straight out. I've done this before where I cut that off and take a drywall screw and go down inside of it and then gently pry, like with a claw hammer, and pry it out. But at least I'm confident that I can get that out of a rusty hub as long as I have access to it. A lot of times you get in there and there's no way to reach this. And there it is. But of course it's buried by the backing plate. So I either need to take these locators off and pull this, which those will probably break. I'd almost rather trim that away. Just cut it off. I don't know. Let's see what happens. Fortunately, Ford used quality fasteners, because if this was a 12-year-old General Motors product, every single one of those would have broke off. Now if I can get that out in the same fashion as this backing plate, I'll be pretty darn happy. Of course I say that, it's not off yet. Yeah, this truck sat in a gravel driveway before I had it, and that's why it looks this bad. Overall it's solid, but you remember the rockers, they rusted from just sitting. So my next quest, this is an Allen head cap screw. I'm going to try and get that out. Then I can follow this wire throughout wherever it goes. All right, hang on. Unbelievable. Well, it came out. Well, I better look at the ones I bought. I might not have the right ones. on, it shocks the metal, believe it or not. It expands and contracts. It's a good way to take tie rod ends off too. You can grab 2 hammers and hit that and it'll just pop right out. It's just a harmonic vibration shock. I'm really banking on this one to come out like the last one did, but I don't know. This one looks pretty rough. So I'm going to push down, get a leverage bar so I don't have to exert unnecessary force. It either rounded or nope, it turned. Cool. We're moving in the right direction. It's shallow to boot, but I mean it's faced up and you can get at it, so I could do a number of things. Besides drilling it out, I could cut a slot in it. Oops. I could cut a slot in it and use a big flat bladed screwdriver and get it out, but I'm glad I don't have to. So it's moving, but it's not really coming out. Let me stand up and pull on it. Yep, this one's being a little stubborn. It's turning, so it'll come out. Now I just got to clean that out. I want to tap it down in there so that the screw isn't forcing that in. That makes it all the way down first, then the screw just holds it. Because you could crack it or wedge it and it won't get all the way down and it won't read. It reads magnetic pulses is all it does. There's serrations or a castellated section of the back of the hub, and this is nothing more than a ground on off, sending a signal to the ECU and also to the ABS controller. That's how your ABS works. It knows how fast the wheel is going, so it knows when it's stopped, and it knows to modulate the brake pressure. It also knows how fast it's going. It knows if it's spinning. It's sending a bunch of data through this wire via pulses. If you didn't know that. Chances are the people that watch this channel, they know that. I don't have to explain it, but I do. That's it. Plenty tight enough. All right, I'm going to put this back together, turn the truck around, and work on the rears. My dashboard lights are telling me that the advanced track system still needs service. Either I have to roll the truck and let the data get picked up from the new sensors, or it was neither one of those fronts. It's the rears. That's why I bought all 4. I've never done the wheel speed sensors on this truck, and now that the front are done, I was wondering how are they going to get that sensor into the center of this hub. And I thought, well, you know what's going to happen? I probably have to take the whole entire brake assembly off, and you know what's inside of there? Emergency brake springs and cables that, you know, in the event you have a failure, you can hit that and you'll still, this basically is like a drum brake inside of here. And I was like, great, all that's got to come apart. And I kept looking and happily look at what I have discovered. That's the sensor. Remember at the beginning I showed those long ones? At first I thought I had the wrong ones. No, the long ones are for the back. So this goes all the way inside to the hub, which is great because this is a 10 millimeter. I should be able to unscrew this, pull that out. Even if I got to fight with it, I'll get it out both sides. And if this solves my service advance track warning on the dash, I'll be super pumped. But anyway, I'll let you know how that goes if there's a problem. But I think this one's gonna go okay, knock on wood. Let me get these two out, and then I'll unstring them, unplug them, plug the new ones in, and take it for a test drive. But if I run into anything interesting, I'll let you know. Lucky me, both of them pulled right out. I used my trusty Nip-X pliers and leveraged it, wiggled, sprayed, and it pulled out. So this is a short one that goes here. The long one goes to the other side. They all end up here. Love these things. The reason that I'm changing all four of these is because when I initially got this truck, aside from the rusty rockers, which if you look are excellent now, it had multiple codes on the dash, and one of the big ones that would actually send it into limp mode was the ABS controller. It was faulty. So I took it off. You can drive these trucks without that ABS controller on there, and the big problem is when you replace it, they're about $1,100 new, and then you got to pay someone whatever money they hold ransom over your head, a couple $1,000 in some cases, to program it to your VIN number. Since my ABS controller was already programmed to this truck, I just had it rebuilt. I sent it out, they rebuilt it, changed all the magnetic switches, gave it back, and that code went away. I no longer had that. But I still had these wheel speed codes that were driving me nuts. And actually, they weren't driving me nuts. This is the first vehicle I've ever had that when the dash gives you a complaint, this one didn't bother me. This truck is clean. I'm real happy with this thing. So I finally got around to doing the wheel speed sensors. So there's all four of them. The two rears and the two fronts. It took about 3 hours, I guess, which honestly, for this, it's not bad. I disconnected the battery because if you disconnect the battery, touch your two leads together, not while connected, of course, over here, it pulls the short-term memory out of your ECU. The long-term memory is never leaving, like your hard codes and your mileage and stuff like that, engine run hours, whatever the ECU contains, that's never leaving because there's a battery in there. But the short-term codes you can get rid of by touching the two cables together and holding them for around 10 seconds. It erases that initial soft TDC trouble codes, which in theory, tighten them up, start my truck. I just wanted to do it because I felt like I owed it to the truck. This thing's got low miles, drives like a dream, plenty of power. Let's see if it worked. Well, I put it back on the ground and put it out on the road, and did the codes go away? I bet you'd like to know. Stay tuned next week to find out. No, I'm just kidding. It did not. Codes are still there. And what's ridiculous is I believe it's a software problem. However, a 12-year-old truck with a software problem that runs perfect and everything works, it can keep its software problem. I'm driving it. That's it. On to the next thing. The reason that this is in here today is because, well, it's in here every day, but we use this to plow snow. It's a 2003 Yamaha Grizzly 660 cc's. It's a single cylinder. You could round down and call it a 650 or round up and call it a 700. I'll tell you right now, it's a beast. It's old, it's automatic, so there's no gears, you don't shift. There's a clutch, but the clutch is centrifugal, basically like a snowmobile. There's two sheaves that open and close based on RPM, and it's kind of, think of it like a bicycle sprocket. Big one in the front, small one in the back. As RPM changes, the sprocket size change, and it changes how it engages forward motion, or reverse. So that's how it works. 660 is kind of a lot. You know, there's some cars over in Europe that have smaller engines than that. This is a little tank. It's a little powerhouse. It's actually, you know, it's a utility quad. It's designed for plowing snow, and you can off-road it, but this is not a jumper. What we use it for besides snow is pulling around these broken down trucks and cars. It says you're only supposed to tow 1,200 pounds on this, but I have hooked a 2,700 pound trailer to it and drug it up out of the backyard. So I know this thing is a beast. It's been well maintained. It's been in the family for, you know, since it was new. So it's 21 years old. It has never been rebuilt. I have adjusted the valves. I've cleaned the carburetor several times, and it's been through probably 4 batteries in 5 years, 6 years. And it keeps going through batteries. It was driving me nuts. And I would go, oh, well, the batteries today are just cheap crap, you know. So I'd buy another one. The short version is it finally stopped charging the batteries. Now, it would charge the battery if you were holding it wide open. It would go up just a little over 12, which is what you need. I have the service manual, so I looked up how to test the stator. The ignition system on these is fairly simple. It's kind of like a car, but it doesn't have an alternator. On a car, the alternator charges your battery. When the engine's running, it's spinning the electric motor that puts juice back into your battery. If all you did was get in your car, start it, move it 10 feet, and turn it off, and do that 20 times in a row, eventually your car may not start because you haven't put back juice that you were using to start it. I just assume that's what was happening with this. If all you do is move it around and you never get it revving out, you never spin that stator fast enough to put juice back in the battery. And I'm like, it's just killing batteries, you know. But after like the second one this year, I went, something's wrong, we gotta check. I have the covers off, and the stator is inside of this case, just behind the pull recoil assembly. And that's a single cylinder, but to illustrate the point, I'll show you over here. As the pistons go up and down and the crank spins, there's a magnet that spins by a bunch of coils, and that's what produces the electricity. So that's basically how that works. The ignition portion of these machines, much like a motorcycle, very, very simple. You have a battery which provides power to turn the starter. Once the engine is running, you then have the stator which provides power back to the battery, plus any electronic devices you might have running. Also, there are 2 other components. One is called a CDI and one is called a rectifier / regulator. The power runs through the regulator and the CDI. The CDI is basically the direction of power, sending various voltages to certain items. And the rectifier is how much voltage. That's the way I understand it. If somebody knows more than I do, feel free to explain it. But make sure you're very thorough, because I want to know all the details. Everybody that I work with, you know, there's a couple of linemen, and they're very knowledgeable about power and flow, and I'm always asking them questions, and they go, that's a good question, I'll find out for you, which, you know, that's the proper answer. So if I don't know something, I want to know it. Anyway. This one stopped charging. I tested with the manual, the shop manual, I tested the resistance of the stator. So basically with the readings I got, my stator is good. The CDI, I know the CDI is good because it will start. Without the CDI, it's not going to start. It doesn't know where to send what. So it's kind of like an ECU. Even when I would rev out the engine, I wasn't getting any voltage. I got 8 volts. I would have a fully charged battery, which is like 13 or 12.6, 12.7, whatever, and I would put it in here, start the engine, and it would instantly drop to 8. That means it's using 4 volts to power all the stuff on this thing, including the ignition. So I'd hold it wide open throttle, this thing's revving to the moon, and I'm testing the battery and still only 8 volts. So to me, that said bad rectifier. A couple good things about rectifiers. Number 1, they're easy to get to. Number 2, they're cheap. You can get the Yamaha factory replacement for $143.50, or you can get the Chinesium, who cares if it works. I know there's a bigger issue there, but whatever. $22. So I like the $20 version. They look the same, it has the same plugs, they feel the same. tastes the same. Let's put this in and test and see if we get voltage, because I need this to work. I got junk cars to move around. Even if that wasn't the problem, which I can't imagine it not being, the only thing I can think is that if my testing procedure, well, I already know my testing procedure for the stator was correct, but my issue lies in the exact reading. I had to make an assumption based on the location of the decimal point that my meter was giving me the same numbers that the book was. And I made an assumption, but I believe it to be correct. So let's click that baby in there. Plenty of voltage. This is a lithium battery I paid a little more for, but it actually had more cranking amps than the other one. The other one is way heavier than this, but lighter weight means more power. I don't mind if I put that rectifier in and it ends up being an incorrect reading and the stator was in fact bad. I don't mind, because it's 21-year-old electronics that have been underwater 100 times. So I'm hoping that this doesn't turn out like my wheel speed sensors. Time and money in the garbage. Okay, so in theory, I don't need the covers on to run the engine. So in theory, I should turn the key. I hear the relay click. Why is the brake light on? Oh, there. It was stuck. Okay. That's the starter solenoid. It should just run. Making the right power. I'm going to let it warm up a minute. Hang on, give me a few seconds. It is old. They say 500 hours and you need a top end rebuild. I'm at 488. It's got good compression, it still makes good power. We might do that this winter. Tear it down, put a piston in there, clean the clutches, put a new belt. We might do that. It's been really good to us. I gave it a little bit of choke to raise the idle. I'm going to put a tester on it and find out if the rectifier did in fact solve our charging problem. Now remember, I was going through batteries like crazy and I couldn't get any voltage at high RPMs coming back into this battery. So when I test this with it running, even at an idle, albeit slightly raised, I should get over 12 volts. Anything over 12 volts and it's considered a win. I'll throttle it higher. I don't really see any reason to, because if at an idle, which is most of what it's going to do, it gives you more than you started with. It'll charge the battery as you use it. Every time you start it, it will replace voltage to the battery. I'm hoping. We've had a few wins, we've had a few losses. So let me get this running and we'll take a look at the gauge. Heck yeah, man. That makes me happy, I'll tell you. Even though it was a bit of wasted time and energy on the F-150 and the wheel speed sensors, at least that turned out good. And the parts are starting to arrive for this, which will be so good. I can't wait to get these put in. These are some nice speakers. We got 2 more tweeters coming, and then we also have a Bluetooth receiver that's going in there. That'll be great. I like to finish on a high note, and normally I would give out a big metal yell because we are working with music equipment. Clearly I'm not going to do that, but I am feeling it. I like it when a plan comes together, and it's super cool. There's all kinds of irons in the fire right now. Next week will be the last of the trial period, 90 days. I said I would give this once a week, 90 days. I'll let you know the results of the test period next week. Every Thursday, 7 p.m., we're doing new episodes. Or will we? Let's take a look at the data. That's where we're going to have to leave it for today. I tell you what, I'm going to play us out and see if I can catch another one of those tail whips. Thanks. I'll see you soon.